Today's podcast is brought to you in part by Freshen Up Energy. Listen, y'all know I'm a busy guy, and sometimes I need a bit of a boost, which is why I turn to Freshen Up Energy. With 100 milligrams of caffeine derived from coffee beans, vitamins B, C, and D, and zero sugar, Freshen Up has become my new go-to for getting things done. But hey, if you're new and want to try it yourself before getting a 30-serving tub, get yourself the 4-star tube set with flavors such as Blue Raspberry, Cherry Blossom, War Cherry, and Freedom Berry to see which one you like the most. With 15 flavors now and more on the way, I'm sure you'll find the one you love soon. And don't forget to use promo code PLUMES10 at checkout to save 10% of your order. And hey, if we get enough out there, maybe we'll even see a Plumes-themed flavor in the near future. Thinking something like Over the Moon for the name. But that promo code again is PLUMES10, and thank you to Freshen Up Energy for helping me bring this show to you. Without further ado, let's begin the episode. Hello everyone and welcome to PlumesCast. My name is Seth, aka PhantasmaPlumes, and I'm coming to you pre-recorded from the Observatarium. As always, I thank you for tuning in today. Now, before I get started in here today, first and foremost, if you haven't noticed by the time ticker on this one, this is going to be a very, very short podcast episode. Because, real quick, I do not have a good way of getting in contact with y'all. Like, genuinely speaking, I have some people that only listen to the podcast, the things. There's some people that come out to the Twitch streams, and there's some people that hang out in the Discord. And genuinely, I didn't want to say the same thing 3 times over, so it's just like, all right, let me just do a podcast episode devoted entirely to the updates coming on, because unfortunately, there are a couple of things in the near future that are going to happen that might change the way PlumesCast works, how it looks. And I wanted to make sure you guys had, at least a couple of days to hear the announcements before, I went through and did anything. Really, I wish I had, an email list, or a button that I could hit and just be like, oh yeah, subscribe to, PlumesCast newsletters right here. But genuinely, I don't know a good way of going about doing that quite yet. And to be entirely honest, I haven't done enough research into it. I know that when I, go in and design my websites and all, I can go in and, put in a button and be like, hey, when you hit this, do this, create a form, blah, 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 blah. But, again, that's, far, far off right now. So, I hope you guys will give me a little bit of a pass this week. It wasn't because I couldn't come up with a topic. No, genuinely. I had things that I needed to talk with you all about. And really, I think next week I'll probably be talking about the importance of being organized as I'm, learning myself, as I'm putting together, my Notion and getting my book stuff all taken care of and, finding more space for hobbies instead of, just scrolling the internet. But that all to say, as of possibly the last half of this week, maybe early next week, I'm not entirely sure how long it will take, we are going to be moving podcast providers. Now, what that means is basically I've been using what was Anchor. It's now Spotify for podcasters to host PlumesCast ever since its inception. And for a while, it was perfectly fine when it was known as Anchor. Because on Anchor side of things, I was able to, see all the analytics appropriately. I was able to, reach out and do ad stuff. That's why we were able to do the Anchor by Spotify ad at the beginning of episodes. And more importantly, everything that was sent off at the right times. Because one thing I've noticed about Spotify for podcasters, since it's been rebranded, is whenever I post an episode, I don't get notifications. Because, I turn on notifications for everything. So that way I know when the episode hits, Google Podcasts, when it hits Apple Podcasts, when it hits Spotify, when it hits, the smart devices, and, the Amazon side of things. And sometimes it'll be a couple of hours after the fact, And it's just like, I don't like that. And sometimes I'll get a notification the next day, and I'm just like, that never used to happen. So primarily what I'm doing this for is consistency. Also, ever since it became Spotify for podcasters, my analytics haven't been 100% correct. So, it required me to go jump into a couple of different pages, which I know that sounds like a first world problem. But when it came time for other integrations that I was looking into, for example, there's one called Podcorn, I believe it is, where you basically put your analytics on the website, and then they say, hey, these are people that are similar to you, as far as what kind of ad content they want out. You can reach out to them by hitting this button, so on and so forth. But basically, they wouldn't let me do that using Spotify for podcasters because the analytics from Spotify for podcasters just doesn't work. It isn't correct. It isn't giving me actual numbers. It doesn't allow me to focus, where my attention should be. And really, that's kind of been a pain in the ass because I'm really trying this last, third of the year, this last quarter, if you will, to be a lot more professional. I know that sounds kind of, open-ended, but really, I'm doing a couple of different things on the Twitch side of things and on the YouTube side of things, and I wanted to kind of bring that same mindset over to podcasting because really the big spark that caused all this is we recently hit over 50 episodes. And what does that 50 episode benchmark mean? So when you start a podcast, if you go on to Reddit or any, podcasting blog or whatever, you'll find a bunch of people will say, okay, when you start a podcast, for most podcasts, I think it's a average of over 75% of podcasts don't make it past the first 10 episodes. And of that 75%, of the remaining 25%, only 5% go on to make over 50 episodes. They stay consistent with it. And genuinely, I can't say, I'm a loose variable in that 5% because there are times where I have to take, little breaks here and there. And there are times where I couldn't do an episode one week because of, crazy circumstances going on. And I'll lead that all into something else later. But when you get over that 50 episode hump, that's when people will start taking you a little more seriously, especially as a content creator, as a podcaster. So, as I'm continuing to build out everything else, I want to give that same energy, if not more, to the podcast side of things. Because I know I have a completely different reach on the podcast side of things, in which I can talk to near everybody, compared to, the Twitch side and the YouTube side, where it's primarily gaming and maybe some cooking. That said, I want to ask y'all too, as I'm doing all this, as I'm kind of rebranding and rebuilding, I want to know what social media y'all want me to kind of focus my attentions on. Because, real quick, I have not been super active on Twitter as of late. I just, honestly, every time I get onto it, it kind of reminds me that the website's not doing great. It's funny, I got my Blue Sky invitation yesterday, and I was super excited, and I was looking around, and it's still kind of barren. You can find me at Blue Sky. It's still PhantasmaPlumes at bluesky.social or whatever, and I'd be more than happy to have you guys there. But really, I'm trying to figure out what social media I need to focus on, so that way, because I'm, again, as you guys hear in the beginning of these episodes, when you hear the Freshen Up ad, I'm kind of a busy guy, and I'm not the best when it comes to, really, I guess, promoting myself and being active on different social medias. I'm pretty talkative in my Discord if somebody pings me. It's one of those you have to kind of engage with me first, and then I'll come back and be oh yeah, blah 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 blah. Otherwise, I'm just I get into my work zone and I start working something at the office or something like that, or I come home and I'm relaxing, something like that, and then I just kind of let it pass on by. And I'm trying to be better about that. So if you guys have a preference, a social media that you want me to kind of really hammer down the PlumesCast stuff on, whether that be Tumblr, whether that be Twitter, whether that be Facebook, whatever that be, Reddit, whatever that may be, please let me know. I will be more than happy to see what I can't do to accommodate that. Now, I've been talking about being more professional going forward, and I've kind of integrated that somewhat more into my Twitch side of things. And I know a lot of you who listen to the podcast have never seen me stream because I have strange streaming hours, Monday, Wednesday, Friday from like 7:30 to, usually 9:30, 10. But I've set up a couple of different charity things on the Twitch side of things, because if you've never seen my Twitch stuff, which again, completely understandable, usually from October, November, December, I do 3 different charities. Like, this is my big charity push for the year. And right now, Twitch always does something called September, in which subscription prices are half off, but the full amount goes to the streamer, I believe it is. So basically, every streamer pushes for subs because, it's a good time. It makes for a great opportunity to connect with the community and to build out your community and basically pledge your, I don't want to say allegiance, but like your support to your favorite content creator. And as such, they come back around and say, hey, if I hit these sub numbers, this is what I'm willing to do. And while I do have a sub list count that, if we hit certain things, I'll play different games, I'll set up different events, so on and so forth, I really wanted to focus on my Trick or Treat for UNICEF stuff. So every October, for the past 2-3 years, I've done a Trick or Treat for UNICEF campaign where we basically go through and, raise money for charity, or we raise money for, medicine, for food, for water, in, underprivileged countries. And so, I decided to change that up. So instead of going through the Trick or Treat for UNICEF mantle, I actually just set out a full-on campaign between now and October 31st, in which you can donate to UNICEF directly. So, and I kind of did this too because there's been a lot of different scandals that have been going out around Twitch, if you do some digging around, in which, people will be like, oh yeah, you donate to my PayPal and it goes to charity. And it's just like, yeah, where it's really going. The charity of them. And so, with all that said, Twitch hosts their own charity service. I think maybe a tiny percentage of it, like 5%, goes to Twitch when you make a donation just because they're hosting it. But everything else goes to the charity directly. It doesn't come across my hands at all. So if you go to my Twitch page, twitch.tv/PhantasmaPlumes, you'll see a little donate button. I don't need to be live for you to be able to donate to charity. I will get a notification that somebody has, but it isn't a necessity of sorts for me to be live. If you want me to thank you live, I am fully about that. And if I see that somebody from, the Spotify or anything, really, if somebody comes in and donates when I'm not streaming, I'm probably going to just come and thank them on the next podcast and be like, hey, I just want to reach out and, on the next stream too and be like, hey, so-and-so donated this amount. Like, genuinely thank you. But the reason I'm doing this between September and October this time instead of just October is because I don't necessarily need the sub money, if that makes sense. Like, yes, having, the Twitch payouts and all are nice, but I don't want to start my charity season off by being like, hey, you could pay me and I'll do this, and this. Like, I don't want that to be the option. I felt weird about it last year, and this year I'm like, all right, I'm going to rectify that. And in fact, I've made it more incentivized. So for every dollar raised, I'm going to be walking a mile to match it. It's essentially a march of dimes kind of thing. But I'm doing it using the virtual challenges that I've been talking to you about, the Conqueror challenges. So basically, I have the goal capped at $300, but I'm willing to go further than that and say every dollar after $300 is half a mile. Or, and this is why I'm doing it through the Conqueror Challenge, I have a couple of my mod team that want to be a part of that. And I will make the invite code, public. So that way, if you want to come in and be a part of it too, be a part of the PhantasmaPlumes community of change, you guys are more than welcome to come in. In fact, the Conqueror Challenge right now is doing a 70% off sale now until the 14th, I believe it was. And it's incremental. So, your first race, it's like 15% off, and then it's 25% off, 30% off, so on and so forth, up to 70%. And so you can get what I'm doing this with, the Road to 2023, I believe it's called, is part of that deal. And you don't have, you can have the ticket and have it ready in your account. It doesn't expire until the end of the year. But you can have that sitting there ready to go. And then when I release the code, you guys just go into the account, add or start the ticket, and then say, I'm joining a team, and put, my information there. And then you will be a part of us. And you can race against me directly. Which is always my favorite part of it. But I wanted to make that more out there because, hey, it's a good time to save money. Also, when you do the Conqueror's Challenge, you also get a medal at the end of it. You also help either plant, I believe it's 50 trees, or take 50 bottles out of the ocean, depending on what your preference is. So, it all goes to great causes throughout the board. And really, I'm just incredibly thankful to my community to be able to do that. Last but not least, one more little bit on that too. For every $50 raised in that campaign too, I pledge to make a change to either equipment or the observatarium, which really, I know you guys don't get to see that, but, if you want me to get a new mic, if you want me to, do new lights or put some Halloween decorations up, or be a part of the fun, you're more than welcome to get involved in that. I do ask that you guys kind of come over the Twitch side of things, because when we hit that mark, it's community decided. Unless you send me an email and it's like, hey, I'm about to drop, $100 into your donation thing. I want you to get a pop filter, then, we go from there. But anyway, last but not least, every donation that comes with that, you can help guide podcasts. I'm taking, full-on requests this time. So if you make a donation, I will talk about whatever you want me to talk about on the next podcast or, the week following, just so that way I have time to think about my response and come up with a good, coherent conversation about it. Last but not least, the YouTube pods. I've been talking about, being more professional and all. So I will be moving forward with getting the YouTube pods back up and going again. Before it just took time, and now I've kind of got a decent schedule working out. I don't know if I'm going to keep doing a little bit of the past and the present to, enhance the pods as they were, because right now I believe episode 5 would be the next one going up. And I like having that difference where it's like, hey, here's here's episode 5 of PlumesCast. If you want to hear all the way up to episode 55, the 50 episode difference, here you go. Go to Spotify, go to Apple Podcasts, go to Google Podcast, and then go from there. But those will be returning to YouTube here soon. I'm hoping within the next week or so, as I'm making all these changes, to find a little bit of extra time where I can sit down and get all that programmed out, especially with the move to Acast. But anyway, I think that's all about I gotta say. It's been about 20 minutes. So seriously, thank you for allowing me to have this update episode. I think I can hear my sweet, sweet fiance pacing around the apartment because she hungry. So I'm going to wrap this up. But guys, remember, you can find me in the night skies across different platforms. You've got PhantasmaPlumes on Twitch, Twitter, and YouTube, and Tumblr. You can listen to PlumesCast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and soon to be YouTube in the form of pods again. And you can email the show directly by sending it to PlumesCast@gmail.com. That email again is PlumesCast, PLUMESCAST @gmail.com. Or if the podcast is enough plumes for you, find topics such as technology and book reviews over at Phantasmagoria of Plumes.blogspot.com. That URL one more time, Phantasmagoria of Plumes.blogspot.com. Guys, thank you all so much for listening in, and as always, I'll talk to you again from the stars very soon. Until next time, everyone, bye-bye!